What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. There's a lot of double swipes I have to do in this year, but there's a lot that kind of goes into these things, man. I have to do a lot of market research, a lot of analysis. I have to talk to your mom, I have to talk to your grandma, man. And they're not easy people to talk to, and they're always like, man, go review the older phones, That's the only reason I make older technology reviews, is to make your parents happy. So next time you try to diss me and be like, why don't you review the older technology? Talk to your parents, they're stuck in the past. But with all that set aside, I'm sorry I got heated. We're going to be looking at the iPhone 5C and seeing how it holds up in 2019, looking forward, looking backwards, taking a good look at this thing, man. Honestly, there's not a lot that has changed with this phone, but nonetheless, there's a lot that has changed with Apple as a company. And I think the iPhone 5C, in a way, kind of introduced itself or kind of reincarnated to another phone that was released last year, I guess the newest iPhone, the iPhone XR. And I guess the legacy of the iPhone 5C is pretty cool, but I think overall the iPhone 5C was kind of a bland phone overall. I know that's kind of controversial, whatever, but nonetheless, the iPhone 5C was released in 2013 in September, so this year it will eventually be 6 years old, so that's pretty decent. Pretty crazy old phone if you ask me. I mean, the iPhone 5C, when I'm using it now, it doesn't feel, honestly, this is the crazy thing. The iPhone 5C doesn't even feel like a super old phone. I think iOS 10 was really optimized for these older phones, including iPhone 5, the iPhone 5C, all those phones that ran it, even the iPads. I think some of them, I don't know which ones ended on iOS 10, but the iPhone 5C, even when I'm using it now, is still a pretty solid performer. That's going into the specs, kind of. I'll talk about that in a second. The screen was 4 inches, and pretty much the whole entire body, pretty much everything about this phone was the iPhone 5C incarnated. The main difference was on the back with the colors that you could choose from. Now I have a blue one, I have a white one. I don't think I owned any other color. Maybe I owned the green one or a yellow one at one point, but I never owned one of these as a main phone ever. I just used them as side phones, and I think overall this phone was pretty cool. I think it was more so market research from Apple's end to kind of test the waters to see what a budget model could bring. And I believe this is the first time Apple ever released 2 iPhones in one release. There was the iPhone 5C and there was the iPhone 5S as well, so they released those at the same time. So kind of interesting to say the least. I guess it kind of brought that. Now kind of stepping away from the hardware, obviously nothing has changed there. Going into the software, this is another thing where not much has changed, but this thing was released with iOS 7, which was the year after the iPhone 5, but it was kind of unfair for the iPhone 5C owners because they got a technically brand new phone, but they weren't able to keep it for the same lifespan as the iPhone 5C, whereas now with the iPhone XR, I do think that it's going to last as long as an iPhone XS and XS Max. In my opinion, I think the iPhone X is going to last just as long as the iPhone XR. You heard it here first. If you haven't seen my other videos talking about it, I'm telling you right now, I'm not like almost 99% positive the iPhone XR is going to last. I'm almost 99% positive the iPhone X is going to last as long as the iPhone XS and XS Max, but the iPhone 5C did not last as long as the iPhone 5S, which was released in the same exact year, but that kind of makes sense too because the iPhone 5C was just like an iPhone 5, so I guess it is what it is. But in terms of software, nothing really has changed, but you kind of have to keep this in mind. Even though the software hasn't changed, the apps are still being supported in the App Store, so you can go update them if you want to and all those good things. And you can still download a bunch of apps on iOS 10. I think probably next year, apps are going to stop being developed for iOS 10. They're going to move over. I think in iOS 11, they actually improved the 64-bit architecture, so all those 32-bit ARC phones are not supported. So I think Apple, by next year, they're going to stop supporting apps on 32-bit. That's kind of a stupid thing for me to say. I have no proof of that. It's just kind of my opinion, but I don't know, I could be right. I've been right a couple times. I've been wrong most of the time, though, but it's whatever. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of software. Again, nothing really has changed besides the apps being updated into the App Store, but kind of moving over to the performance side of things. So this thing was released with the Apple A6 chip, which was the same thing inside the iPhone 5, a dual-core CPU, and 1 gig of RAM. So overall, what I'll tell you is the performance, in my opinion, for a 6-year-old phone is not that bad. I'll be completely honest. I think this is kind of the same thing as the iPhone 5. I said it there too. The performance isn't horrible. I've seen a lot of older phones. I've seen a lot of 3-year-old or 4-year-old phones that are just laggy and choppy and can't even perform as good as this phone. Now, it's kind of an overstatement a little bit, but I think overall the iPhone 5C in terms of performance, now it's not the best performing phone. It's still very, very laggy and it's kind of slow overall. If you try to load a web page, if you try to do certain things with it, it'll definitely kind of slow down a little bit. It's noticeably slow, but it's not horrible when you factor in the age, the price, the everything of this phone. And that's kind of crazy. I was not expecting it. I mean, I knew in the back of my head that it was still going to be pretty decent, but I really pride Apple for making iOS 10 as smooth as it was for this older type of phone. So I have nothing but respect for Apple for doing that. In terms of gaming, it really just depends what you do. Temple run casual games run perfectly fine. Pew Pew runs perfectly fine. Dude, I don't know why. I think the developers of Pew Pew actually stopped supporting the app on the App Store because I cannot find it anymore. And that was one of my favorite games. So if somebody from Pew Pew department of them coding the game or whatever watches these videos, can you guys go back up and upload that game, dude? Seriously, like it was one of my favorite games to test, and I can't even test it anymore because it's not in the App Store. So yeah, somebody DM me. I think I talked to the owner of that game one time in the DMs, but I think he blocked me too because I said something. But in terms of the heavier intensive games, I think they run okay for a 6-year-old phone. I don't think it's the best performing phone. Honestly, I think this is like a 7-year-old phone because technically the iPhone 5, okay, whatever. But in terms of performance, what I'll tell you is I'm surprised. I probably could not use it as a main phone. I think it'd be too slow for me, but I'm honestly kind of happy with the performance. I'm content. I'm not extremely happy. I'm not extremely angry either. I'm content with the performance of this phone. So that kind of sums up the performance of it, but there's still one thing, actually two things we haven't hit on yet. One of them is the camera, and we're going to hit on that now, man. It has an 8 megapixel sensor on the back, no dual cameras, no 4K videos, no whatever, but it does take 1080p videos, and it's a pretty solid camera. Again, solid is the one thing I use all the time. It's an average camera, okay? For a 6-year-old phone, it's average. It'll take shots. I would not probably use it as a main phone. I wouldn't depend on it too much, but if you're in a pinch and you need something really, really quick, I guess you could take okay photos on it. Don't know if this is true or not, but I might have done a video at least comparing an iPhone 5 to the iPhone 10R or iPhone 5C. They have the same exact camera. I honestly don't even remember, but maybe I did a camera test between the 5 or 5C against the iPhone 10R, and I found that the photos on the 10R were much, much better, but still the iPhone 5C does take photos, so that's a plus. Okay camera. When I say okay, I mean it's probably like a 5 out of 10. In today's standards, it's probably like a 3 out of 10 because there's no 4K, there's no telephoto zoom lens, nothing, no portrait modes, nothing like crazy like that. But for the time it was released, it was decent, so I'll give it that. And the front camera is 1.2 megapixels, and surprisingly, I was expecting it to be worse than it was. Again, I'm not much of a selfie taker because I've been told by some people I'm too ugly, so I really don't want to talk about it right now. But I think in terms of the camera overall, it's a decent camera, okay? I'll honestly, for the 5C owners, I'll say it's a 5 out of 10, okay, to make you guys happy, alright? So that's the camera aspect of it, and this is the last thing we're going to hit on, is the battery life. I'll tell you that I think it's okay, alright? I don't think it's amazing. There were a lot of phones in 2013 that weren't necessarily having the best battery life. This thing had a 1500 milliamp hour battery, so surprisingly the iPhone 8 only has like a 1700 milliamp hour battery, something around there. So this thing's battery size is pretty close to the iPhone 8's, and that was a really good thing for the 5C in a way, but also a dumb thing for the iPhone 8. They should have made that battery size bigger. Why are they even kind of staying in the same realm? They upgrade every single other internal of a phone, but they don't upgrade the battery. It makes no sense. Now, battery life, in my opinion, standby time was pretty decent. The overall just usage of it, I guess, is just, what I'll say is it's probably like a 6 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10. But the thing is that most of these batteries have deteriorated quite a bit. So if you use it, you might be able to get a day out of it. Depending on your usage. I'll tell you right now, with my iPhone 10, if I took that same usage and put it on the iPhone 5C, I would probably get a half a day, maybe even less than that, especially when you factor in me using my Bluetooth always on, AirPods, all that other stuff. A lot of things that you do on a daily basis that you don't even realize, whereas on the iPhone 5C, it's kind of a strenuous task. So I'll definitely say that the overall battery life is a 5 out of 10 as well, okay? Now, some other notable things to note. There's no fingerprint sensor, just a home button, no dual cameras, no water resistance, nothing crazy like that, no Face ID, pretty big bezels. I mean, I think we've all seen an iPhone 5 or 5C or 5S, whatever, one of those phones in your whole entire life. It does have a lightning connector on the bottom, which is super cool, I guess, but apparently Apple's moving away from that, so it's kind of a con for you guys now a little bit. And it does have the headphone jack. So would I recommend buying an iPhone 5C as your main phone in 2019? Obviously not. I would not recommend buying it as your main phone in 2019. But what I will say though is that it does make a pretty decent side phone. And what I mean by that is if, let's say, you're going for a hike or you're going jogging, you're going on a trip for something and you're going to be really active, bringing an iPhone 5C with you might not be that bad of an option if you get a case for it, a waterproof case at that. Instead of bringing your iPhone XS Max and breaking it on a hike or something, you can bring an iPhone 5C with you and not be afraid of losing it or doing something crazy with it. Now, with that being said, I think now the further we get, it's kind of more and more a dumb thing to say because our phones are getting waterproof, they're getting water resistance, they're getting more rugged. And the more I recommend, I feel like by next year, I'm going to be like, no, there's really no reason to have this phone outside of a collector's mindset. But I think right now, if you currently own an iPhone 5C, I'd honestly be asking you the same question I asked yesterday for the 4S owners. Why are you doing that? There's so many other phones out there. The 6S is a much better phone than the 5C, and it's not even that much more expensive, maybe like $40-$50 more in the used market. If these things sell for like 50, you can easily get a 6S for like 100-120. So again, I would ask the question, why are you still using it? But as a main phone, I would not recommend it. As a side phone, I don't think it's that horrible of an option. There's way more options out there, but you know what? You do you. I presented you with all the facts. In my opinion, I have love for the iPhone 5C. I think it's a pretty interesting aspect in Apple's timeline of their phones. And I guess I'll just leave it at that, guys, man. If you have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button. That will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys can hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out, but more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out to them.